Today we're going to talk about the silver lining to Republicans taking the House, and I've got two interviews this week. I interview Congressman Jamie Raskin about the extent to which the January 6th committee is now working with the DOJ, whether he's heard from any Republicans behind the scenes about the committee's work, and if he'd ever consider running for president. And I'm joined by Chris Cuomo to discuss how the GOP moves on beyond Trump, and whether his own personal grievances with CNN are why he's pushing for third-party candidates now. I'm Brian Tyler Cohen, and you're watching No Lie. So I wanted to take some time this week to kind of look at big picture and not just focus on one bit of inane Republican bullshit. And I know that so much of what we talk about is despairing, but as we head into 2023, having retained our Senate majority, I actually wanted to focus on the silver lining of losing the House majority, which is a weird thing to say, but I have 2 points here, so bear with me. I'm trying to be optimistic, so this might be tortured, but hear me out. The first silver lining is that we'll have something to contrast heading into the general election in 2024. Republicans bank on people forgetting who they are and how they govern. And who they are is extremists who will seize onto power to strip you of any rights that don't comport with their theology. And how they govern is to ignore what people want and just shove religious extremism down everyone's throats. And they lose jobs and they cause recessions. And in the last 30 years, since I've been alive, there is not a single Republican administration that's created more jobs than a Democratic administration. And our last 2 recessions were under Republican presidents, and our last 2 recoveries were under Democratic presidents. But people forget really quickly. And so having a small taste of what it's like having a Republican House majority will make it so that there isn't some romanticized idea of what a Republican majority will look like, of fiscal responsibility and family values and small government or whatever else Republicans frame themselves on paper. Because in reality, we'll be able to just open our eyes and see them melting down over Hunter Biden's laptop and trying to get trans people killed. And so while from the minority, they could do their little speeches and pretend that they'd be responsible stewards of our government, at least now, from the majority, they won't be able to pretend to be anything other than exactly what they are, which is extremist theocrats pandering to the farthest fringes of their base. Also, they'll do all of that while not being able to actually enact any of their agenda. I know that means that we also won't be able to enact any of our agenda. We won't be able to pass any bills either. But there's a lot to be said for just not letting Republicans do stuff. Sometimes just keeping them out of power is a big enough win to appreciate. And here's the other kind of silver lining, although I guess it's more of a consolation. And that is that when you look at the last 2 years, we kind of did almost everything that we set out to do. And granted, while we didn't get a voting rights bill, which is on Manchin and Sinema, or a law codifying Roe, which is on Manchin and Sinema, or a $15 federal minimum wage, which is on Sinema, we got an absolute ton of other stuff in what was arguably one of, if not the most effective Congresses of our lifetimes. We got the American Rescue Plan and free COVID vaccines and tests. We got the first upgrade to our infrastructure in our lifetimes. That means roads, bridges, rural broadband, EV charging stations across the country. We got the first gun safety bill in 3 decades that'll close the boyfriend loophole and expand background checks for those between ages 18 to 20 and fund red flag laws in the states. We got health care for veterans with the PACT Act. We got tens of thousands of jobs and billions of dollars in investments thanks to the CHIPS Act, which will bring semiconductor chips manufacturing back to the United States. We passed the biggest climate investment in history. We finally allowed the government to negotiate lower drug prices, capped out-of-pocket costs for seniors at $2,000 a year, and insulin at $35 a month. We beefed up IRS enforcement to catch ultra-wealthy tax cheats and imposed a 15% corporate minimum tax for billion-dollar companies that pay zero. We started the process of removing cannabis from the list of Schedule I drugs. We got $10,000 in student loan debt forgiven, which is currently working its way through the courts against opposition by Republicans. We got a record number of judges confirmed, created 10.5 million jobs, 750,000 manufacturing jobs, kept the unemployment rate near a 50-year low, ended our longest war, oversaw a strengthened NATO, stood up for democracy versus autocracy in Ukraine, got the last few months of inflation down to almost flat, and gas prices below what they were even before Russia invaded Ukraine. By any measure, that is a hugely, hugely successful congressional term. If we only got 2 years of unified control of government, those are 2 years we'll be able to look back on and know that we left it all on the field. And so look, none of this is to say that Democrats are perfect. We've got the Manchins and Cinemas that can't get out of their own way. Just this past week, we had Kathy Hochul, the New York governor, nominate an anti-abortion, anti-union chief judge to New York's top court, which, if there is one story that I hope you all know about and raise a stink about, it is that one, because we are very close to having enough New York Democrats in the legislature to come out and say they'll oppose that person's nomination, which is good news. But anyway, Not to say that Democrats are perfect, but I am proud of what we've been able to accomplish in the last 2 years. And we all worked our asses off to give them the opportunity to do that. So I hope that you're all proud too. Now, before we get to 2 really great interviews, I also want to thank you for listening to this show this year. I am under no delusions about there being people out there who are leagues more qualified to opine on this stuff than I am. So I appreciate you giving me a little bit of time each week. I don't take it for granted in the slightest. So thank you and Happy New Year. And if you live anywhere other than Southern California or like Arizona, then I hope you're staying warm. Here's a clip from my interview with Jamie Raskin. What does this moment of finishing your work with the January 6th committee feel like for you? Because, this is the bookend of a really difficult personal journey, one that started with the death of your son, that kind of broke everyone's hearts. And then ended with you showing perseverance and integrity more than I think anybody could possibly imagine in working on this committee anyway, and now finishing your work. So what does it feel like to close this chapter?
Well, it's been a hard time, not just for my family, but for millions of families across the country. It's been a hard time for everybody because of the division and the polarization, and the online hatred and the unearthing and unleashing of really primitive tribal impulses, the racism, the anti-Semitism, the misogyny. And there's so much suffering from COVID-19 and the mental emotional health crisis that has swept so many people into it. So I'm glad that we're closing this chapter. It was sad to say goodbye to the members of the January 6th committee. These people will be my brothers and sisters forever because of what we've been through together. But I'm glad we're closing this chapter. And we're closing it on the note of the truth and the note of accountability. And it's up to other people to see if they follow through on that. But democracy can't just be about the past and rectifying injuries. It's got to be about the future. And our kids are counting on us, and our grandchildren are going to be counting on us, and their future generations. So we've got to save democracy in order to save the human species from climate change, because the autocrats in Russia and the theocrats in Saudi Arabia and Iran and the kleptocrats in Mar-a-Lago are not going to do it for us. I mean, in order to be serious about protecting humanity as well as democracy, you need to put Democrats, small d Democrats around the world, big D Democrats in America, in charge. Nobody else is going to do it. And that's not to say the Democratic Party is perfect, far from it. We've got all kinds of weaknesses and limitations, but we are a party committed to democracy, unlike the other guys. So we got to keep democracy moving forward in the interests of everybody's family.
And here's a clip from my interview with Chris Cuomo. Since leaving CNN, you've called for the end of the two-party system. Do you think that that's stemming from a degree of resentment owed to feeling like you were alienated by your party because of the way the end of the CNN tenure came about? Like that's pushed you away from the two-party system? Because I don't think that you at CNN would be advocating for the end of the two-party system like you are now.
That is true. However, I have always had problems with the party, but I evolved because I was trying to figure out how I can help. I have zero resentment towards CNN or certainly the Democratic Party. I don't give a shit about the Democratic Party. They never had me.
Or not necessarily the Democrats, but the viewers. Like if your viewers were like liberals, and then there came a point where it was like very easy to feel like you were alienated by those same people who you'd served as an anchor for all of those years. Like,
no, I don't feel
does that
like
push you away?
No, I don't blame people for anything. They had nothing to do with this. This was politics. This was politics of new ownership, and this was politics of media. Media resented my brother being on my show to begin with. I always knew that would happen. I just didn't know how high the price would be. I also didn't anticipate him having all those problems. And this was about ownership at CNN, not liking the look, and a boss deciding to save himself by getting rid of me. And I understand it. I'm not hateful. I'm not even resentful. It was wrong, and I don't like it. CNN, in my opinion, is the best media agency in the world. Their audience is not decidedly left, by the way. It probably breaks that way. Most audiences do, okay? So I don't see that as some type of bias. And I just refuse to accept the idea that going after Donald Trump's historical fictions and lies and malice towards not just the institutions of our democracy, but of our media and our society does not make me a lefty. Last night, well, just keep it to CNN. I would have Trump supporters and people from the right on more than anybody else at CNN. And in house and at a house, people didn't like it. In the media, people said, oh, you're giving them a platform. All they do is lie. I disagree. I disagreed then. I disagree now. And I would fight with them. See, that was the difference, is I'm not going to have someone come on and just give them a platform. I've never done that anywhere for anything, okay? That's why I wind up getting into fights with people. Now, not fights the way Tucker Carlson does it or theatricality. I've had almost every guest I've ever been in an argument with on my show thank me for the appearance at the end of it. You can go back and check. And it's because they know I'm not coming from a bad place. I just think that person on that point is full of shit and that they're selling something and it's wrong. And I will say that. And they'll say, no, you're wrong. Here's what. But at the end of it, it's not personal. I'm not going to say anything personal about them. That's not how you win an argument. That's Twitter. So never playing for the Democratic team. If your name is Cuomo and you're running as a Democrat, I will vote for you. Okay. My father's Democratic Party no longer exists. Okay. My brother is a different kind of Democrat than my father was. And I had problems with both of them. I'm a rich guy. I hate taxes. So the idea that I'm a Democrat is just fundamentally untrue. You don't find a lot of gun-owning lefties. But I do think that it's a logical question that you ask. Did I make a change because I'm angry? And the answer is yes, but not because I'm angry at CNN, not because I'm angry at the audience, not because I'm angry at some political party. It's that I'm angry at myself I was angry at myself for not finding a way to be more helpful to the change that is obvious and that we need and the advocacy that we need on people's behalf. That's what it's about for me. It's not about being rueful. It's not about going after anybody. It's not about the past. It really isn't.
To check out both of these interviews with both Jamie Raskin and Chris Cuomo, click the thumbnails right here on the screen or check out the interviews playlist on my YouTube channel. Happy New Year, everyone.